It's just a chair. You can stand." My father said it loud enough for 47 people to hear, not in a whisper, not as a joke, but as a decision. I was standing in a fitted black dress, one hand gripping a crutch, my right knee still stitched together with surgical hardware from a reconstruction 6 weeks earlier. The room was glowing with soft lights, white tablecloths, gold centerpieces, a banner that read, 40 years of love. I paid for every inch of it, and the chair he was talking about, it had my name on it. Across the table, a woman I had met exactly 12 minutes earlier was lowering herself into my seat, my younger brother's new girlfriend, 2 weeks in the family and already more comfortable than I had ever been. My mother smiled at her like she'd just won something. "It's just a chair," my father repeated this time, softer, but still loud enough. "Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic." Funny thing about that word, it's usually used when someone wants you quiet. What no one in that room knew was that 3 days earlier, I had discovered something that made the chair the smallest problem in that building. 3 days earlier, I learned that $15,600 had disappeared from an account that was supposed to fund my physical therapy. Money set aside so I could walk normally again, so I could keep my business, so I wouldn't limp for the rest of my life. And the signature on those withdrawals, my father's. By the end of that night, no one would be asking me to stand in a corner again. But before I tell you what happened when I reached into my purse and pulled out the one document they never expected me to bring, take a moment to subscribe if stories like this resonate with you. Sometimes we listen in pieces, between errands, between appointments, and I'd hate for you to miss what comes next. There's something later in this story that even I didn't see coming, and it changes everything. Let me ask you something. Have you ever paid for the table, but still been told you didn't deserve a seat? Because that night wasn't really about a chair. It was about 10 years of quiet transactions. It was about silence, and it was about the moment I decided I was done funding my own humiliation. Stay with me. What happened next didn't just end a party. It ended a system. 6 weeks before that anniversary dinner, I was standing on a polished marble floor at the Grand Ashford Hotel, measuring the distance between 2 staging platforms for a corporate charity gala. It was supposed to be my largest contract of the year. 200 guests, a live auction, media coverage. I took one step backward to check the lighting angle, and my heel caught on an uneven seat in the flooring. My foot twisted beneath me. There was a sound, sharp, mechanical, the kind of sound that doesn't belong inside a human body. Then pain. The orthopedic surgeon later described it calmly: ligament rupture, structural instability, surgical reconstruction required. He also said something else I didn't forget. If you want full mobility back, you cannot skip rehabilitation. Not with your line of work. My line of work requires standing for 10 hours at a time, walking concrete ballrooms, carrying decor samples, adjusting table placements down to the inch. Standing is not optional for me. From the hospital bed, groggy and still half numb, I called my mother. She listened for less than 15 seconds. "So you'll still be able to organize the anniversary, right?" she asked. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "That must hurt." Just logistics. Their 40th anniversary was already on the calendar. I had agreed months earlier to plan it. Venue, catering, decorations, guest list, everything. "Yes," I said, "I can still plan it." "Good," she replied. "Your father's been looking forward to it." She hung up. No one from my family came to the hospital. Not that evening, not the next day. A colleague drove me home. Another brought soup on day 3. My mother texted on day 5. "Don't forget to confirm the head count with the caterer." There is something about being the responsible child in a family. You become infrastructure. People rely on you the way they rely on electricity, quietly, automatically, without thinking about the source. 3 years ago, my parents were 3 months behind on their townhouse rent. My father had taken early retirement from the manufacturing plant after layoffs. My mother had never worked outside the home. The eviction notice came on a Thursday. By the following Monday, I had wired the funds, $84,000. Every dollar I had saved, I purchased the townhouse outright and placed it in my name. Then, I drafted a lease agreement, $400 a month. Market rate in that neighborhood was nearly triple. They called it generous. I called it practical. I also opened a joint emergency account with my father's name on it. The purpose was simple. If something happened to me, an accident, a medical emergency, he would have access to funds immediately. I deposited $20,000 into that account. In 3 years, they paid rent on time, exactly twice. There was always something. Unexpected expense, delayed pension check, home maintenance, and then inevitably, my younger brother. Ethan is 37 years old, intelligent, charming, restless. He has never held a job longer than 8 months. He has had what my mother calls bad luck with vehicles landlords and financial decisions. I have wired money for car repairs, for credit card settlements, for legal consultations I was told were misunderstandings. Each time, my mother's voice carried the same sentence. He's your brother. Family helps family. And I believed that. Or maybe I wanted to believe that helping meant belonging. While I recovered from surgery, propped on pillows in my apartment, I finalized seating charts for their anniversary dinner. I negotiated catering adjustments from my couch. I reviewed linen samples online. I paid deposits, $6,300 in total expenses. Every invoice in my email. My knee was wrapped in compression bandages. My business was temporarily on hold. Physical therapy appointments loomed ahead. 5 months minimum, according to the surgeon. I told myself the anniversary dinner would be the last big thing I did for them. The final gesture. After that, I would scale back, establish boundaries, shift the dynamic. I believed that. What I didn't yet know was that the dynamic had already shifted, and not in my favor. 3 days before the party, I received a call from a friend who happened to work in finance. Her voice was careful. "There's something you need to look at," she said. At that moment, I still thought the worst thing that could happen that week was standing too long on a healing knee. I had no idea the real fracture wasn't in my body. It was in my family's integrity, and it had already started to split wide open. When my friend Claire said, "There's something you need to look at," I assumed she meant paperwork, a billing discrepancy, a clerical error. Claire has been an accountant for 15 years. She doesn't dramatize. I opened my laptop that evening, my knee elevated on 2 pillows, and logged into the joint account I shared with my father. At first, nothing looked unusual. Then I scrolled and scrolled. 4 withdrawals, 4 separate transactions over 8 weeks. $3,800, $4,100, $5,000, $2,700, $15,600. Gone. My breath didn't catch. It didn't need to. The room felt suddenly smaller without it. I called the bank the next morning. Every withdrawal had been signed in person by my father. The branch manager was polite, professional. "It's a joint account," she reminded me. "He has full authorization." Of course he did. That was the point. I cross-referenced the dates with Claire. The $5,000 withdrawal aligned exactly with a payment to a private debt consolidation agency. The $4,100 transaction corresponded to a legal processing fee in the neighboring county. Ethan had recently mentioned something vague about sorting out paperwork. I hadn't asked questions. I should have. I called my mother first. There was a pause when I mentioned the account. A small one. 3 seconds. Long enough. "Oh," she said lightly. Your father and I were going to tell you. Tell me what? That we borrowed it. Temporarily. You know how tight things have been. Tight had become a flexible word in our family. What was it for, I asked. Another pause. House expenses. And your brother needed help. Of course he did. I kept my voice even. That account was for emergencies related to me. And he is your family, she replied, tone sharpening. Are you keeping score now? I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't accused. But somehow I was the one crossing a line. When my father came on the phone, his voice carried a familiar calm. We'll make it right, he said. Let's not create tension before the anniversary. We can discuss it after. After the party, I was financing. After I stood smiling in front of relatives who had no idea I was funding the mortgage, the catering, and apparently my brother's debts. I need that money for physical therapy, said quietly. We'll figure something out, he answered. They always said that. We'll figure it out, which meant I would. Before hanging up, my mother added one more sentence. Don't bring this up at the dinner. It would embarrass everyone. Embarrass everyone. I stared at the phone after the call ended. Not at the missing money. At the sequence, they had taken the funds. They had told no one. And now they were asking me to protect their image. Later that afternoon, a cousin texted to check in about the anniversary details. She added something else. Are you feeling okay? Aunt Linda mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately. Under a lot of stress. The phrasing was careful, sympathetic. I replied that I was recovering well and keeping busy. But something tightened in my chest. 2 more relatives made similar comments in the following 48 hours. You're taking care of yourself, right? Don't overdo it, especially with medication. Medication. I had stopped prescription painkillers 2 weeks after surgery. I was managing with over-the-counter anti-inflammatories. The realization settled slowly. They weren't just protecting their finances. They were shaping a narrative. If I spoke up about the money, I would be framed as emotional, overwhelmed, unstable from recovery. The groundwork had already been laid. I printed the bank statements that evening. I highlighted each withdrawal in yellow. Then, I opened the lease agreement for the townhouse. The renewal date was in 35 days. I drafted a non-renewal notice. Simple language, clear terms, 30 days notice in accordance with state law. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and placed it inside my purse. I didn't sign it yet. Not because I was unsure, because I wanted to see what they would do if given one last opportunity to tell the truth. The anniversary dinner was in 3 days. 47 guests, a rented ballroom, white linens already delivered. For years, I had funded their comfort quietly. This time, I would fund something else, clarity. And if they chose denial in a room full of witnesses, then I would choose something different. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't preparing a seating chart. I was preparing an exit. The ballroom looked exactly the way I had designed it. Soft ivory drapes, warm overhead lighting, centerpieces arranged at precise intervals. A gold-trimmed banner stretched across the far wall, 40 years together. I arrived 20 minutes early because I always do. My knee was braced beneath my dress. The cane rested lightly in my right hand. I had practiced walking without a visible limp. I knew people would be watching. They always watch when they sense weakness. Guests began to filter in. Handshakes, air kisses, compliments about the decor. You outdid yourself, one of my father's former colleagues said. My mother smiled, as though she had selected every flower personally. She did not introduce me as the organizer. She introduced me as helping. I took my seat at the head table. My name card was positioned to the right of my aunt. I exhaled slowly. Sitting meant stability. Sitting meant I could endure the evening without strain. Ethan arrived 40 minutes late. He walked in with a woman I had never met. Tall, nervous smile. Light blue dress that suggested she had been told the event was formal. My mother stood immediately, arms open, radiant. This must be Sophia, she announced warmly. We've heard so much about you. I had not heard anything. Ethan grinned the way he always did when someone else handled logistics for him. I counted chairs automatically. 8 seats at the head table, 8 name cards, 9 people now standing beside it. My mother glanced at the arrangement, then at me. "Honey," she said gently, "why don't we let Sophia sit here? She's new. It'll make her feel welcome." I kept my voice even. "I need to stay seated tonight." My mother's smile tightened. "There are chairs along the wall, 15 feet away, folding chairs placed for overflow." "I planned the seating," I replied quietly. "This is my assigned seat." My father, who had been cutting into his steak, set down his knife. "It's just a chair," he said. The sentence carried across the table. "You can stand. Don't be dramatic." The word again, dramatic. Conversation around us thinned. Not silent, but thinner. I could feel eyes. Ethan shrugged slightly, as if to say this was all unnecessary. Sophia hovered awkwardly, unsure where to look. I stood, slowly. My knee protested the shift in weight. A dull pressure radiated upward. The cane tapped once against the hardwood floor. Sophia slid into my chair, without meeting my eyes. My place card was moved aside. No one offered me another seat. I walked toward the wall, each step measured, controlled. From the corner, I had a clear view of the table. My father laughing, my mother pouring wine, Ethan leaning close to Sophia, whispering something that made her smile uncertainly. A server passed me with a tray. "Would you like me to bring you a chair?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine," I answered. I wasn't, but I needed the room to see it unfold exactly as it was. 10 minutes later, my aunt approached carrying her own plate. "This isn't right," she murmured. I didn't respond. Across the room, my mother rose for a toast. She spoke about commitment, loyalty, family unity. She thanked the guests. She thanked my father. She thanked Ethan for finding his direction lately. She did not thank me. From the wall, I listened. My cousin leaned toward me during the applause. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. But my mother wasn't finished. As she resumed her seat, she added lightly, "And thank you to everyone who supported us during this stressful time. Recovery can affect people differently." A few heads turned in my direction. There it was, subtle, clean, suggestive. Recovery can affect people differently. The implication hovered in the air. Sophia looked confused. She glanced at me, then at Ethan. "Did you offer to give up your seat?" she whispered to him, audible enough for those nearest to hear. Ethan hesitated half a second too long. "Yeah," he said. She insisted. The lie settled between them. Sophia's expression shifted. I felt something inside me align. For years, I had absorbed humiliation privately. Tonight, it was visible, documented by 47 pairs of eyes. Dinner service began. Plates circulated. No plate was set in front of me. I remained standing. My knee throbbed steadily now. A reminder that healing requires rest, and that I had been denying myself both. From the corner of his room, I watched my father lift his glass. I watched my mother dab at the corners of her eyes, as if overwhelmed with gratitude. I watched Ethan avoid looking in my direction, and I realized something quietly devastating. The chair had never been about comfort. It was about hierarchy. It was a test. Would I move again? Would I shrink again? Would I absorb the slight and protect the image? For 10 years, the answer had been yes. Tonight, it would be different. I reached into my purse. My fingers closed around folded paper. I did not unfold it yet, but I felt the weight of it. Paper is light, but truth is not. And when I stepped away from that wall, no one in that room would ever see me as infrastructure again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The cane tapped softly against the hardwood as I walked back toward the head table. One measured step at a time. Conversations thinned again, like fabric stretched too tight. I stopped behind my father's chair. He sensed me before he turned. "Not now," he said quietly, without looking up. I placed my purse on the table. "I won't be long." My mother's smile flickered. "Sweetheart, sit down. We can talk later." "I've been standing for 40 minutes, I replied calmly. "I think I've earned 2. That was when the room went fully silent. Not polite silence, expectant silence. I reached into my purse, and unfolded the first document. A single sheet of paper, clean, typed, dated. Before we continue celebrating, I said evenly, I'd like to clarify something simple. I turned to my father. Who owns the townhouse you live in? A blink, then another. What does that have to do with anything? My mother interjected quickly. It has everything to do with tonight. My father shifted in his chair. You helped us buy it. No, I said. I purchased it. The deed is in my name. There it was. The first ripple. Murmurs moved through the tables, like wind across dry leaves. My aunt leaned forward. Sophia's eyes widened. Ethan straightened in his seat. I rent it to you. I continued. $400 a month. Market rate in that neighborhood is $1,200. My father's jaw tightened. I laid the paper flat on the table in front of him. This is a formal notice of non-renewal. Your lease expires in 30 days. I will not be extending it. The words were steady, precise, legal. My mother's wine glass trembled in her hand. You can't be serious. I am. You would throw us out, she demanded. I'm not throwing anyone out, I replied. I am choosing not to renew a lease that has been violated repeatedly. The second document came next, highlighted in yellow. I also reviewed the joint emergency account. My father's eyes dropped to the page before I finished the sentence. $15,600 was withdrawn over 8 weeks. All authorized under your signature. No one spoke. The silence now was different. Heavier, those funds were designated for my medical rehabilitation. My mother inhaled sharply. We were going to pay it back. When I asked gently, no answer. Ethan shifted. This is ridiculous, he muttered. I turned toward him. $3,800 went to a private debt agency. $4,100 to a legal filing fee. $5,000 in cash. Would you like me to continue? His face flushed. Sophia looked at him slowly, as if recalculating something. You told me she offered the seat, she said quietly. Ethan didn't respond. My mother stood abruptly, tears rising on cue. This is exactly what I meant, she cried. She's under stress. Recovery changes people. She's not thinking clearly. There it was, the narrative. I met her eyes. I stopped prescription medication 4 weeks ago, I said calmly. My physician can confirm. A few guests exchanged glances. My aunt spoke first. Is this true? She asked my father. He didn't answer. He didn't deny it. He simply stared at the highlighted numbers. That silence was answer enough. I kept my voice level. For 10 years, I have financed stability, rent assistance, emergency transfers, legal fees, quietly. I let that settle. I will not finance secrecy. My father finally spoke, his voice smaller than I had ever heard it. Where are we supposed to go? For the first time that night, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, clarity. That I said softly is not my responsibility anymore. Another murmur rolled across the room. Sophia pushed her chair back slightly. You didn't tell me any of this, she said to Ethan. He reached for her wrist. She pulled away. My mother's tears were no longer strategic. They were desperate. You're humiliating us. I shook my head. No, I'm declining to protect a story that isn't true. I gathered the papers, folded them once, and slid them back into my purse. 30 days, I said. That's the timeline. I looked around the room. 47 witnesses. No raised voice. No accusations. Just facts. For what it's worth, I added quietly. The chair was never about seating. It was about whether I would keep choosing discomfort so everyone else could remain comfortable. I picked up my cane. No one stopped me. As I turned toward the exit, I heard the faint scrape of a chair behind me. Sophia stood. She didn't follow Ethan. She walked toward the far side of the room and sat beside my aunt instead. The head table now had an empty seat, and for the first time that night, it wasn't mine. The parking lot was colder than I expected. Late spring in the Midwest has a way of pretending to be gentle while still holding on to winter. The air hit my face, sharp and clean. I stood there for a moment, beside my car, steadying myself, not because of my knee, but because something inside me had just shifted permanently. I had walked into that ballroom carrying paperwork. I walked out carrying something else, silence that was no longer mine to protect. The calls began the next morning. My mother first. I let it ring. She left a voicemail layered in disappointment. "You embarrassed your father," she said. "You blindsided us." Blindsided. As if the withdrawals had been invisible. As if the lease agreement had not existed for 3 years. By noon, 2 cousins had texted. One wrote simply, "I didn't know. I'm sorry." Another asked if I was okay. My aunt called later that afternoon. "I should have spoken up sooner," she said quietly. "You've been carrying them for years." It wasn't said dramatically. It was said like a fact that had been observed for too long. Ethan didn't call, but I heard through family channels that Sophia left early that night. She asked questions he couldn't answer. She packed a small bag the next morning. Apparently, honesty had been more attractive than loyalty. 30 days passed quickly. My father transferred the first $300 of repayment into my account without a message attached. No apology, no explanation, just the deposit. It was the first financial interaction between us that felt clean. The townhouse was emptied by the 28th day. Boxes carried quietly. A rented truck parked at the curb. I did not attend the move. Not out of cruelty, out of boundary. They found a smaller apartment 20 minutes away. The rent there matched their income. The math was simple. I signed a new lease with a young couple 2 weeks later. Market rate, paid on the 1st. No special conditions. Meanwhile, physical therapy began in earnest. The clinic smelled faintly of antiseptic and rubber mats. Fluorescent lights overhead. Measured exercises. Repetition. At first, I could barely bend my knee without resistance. Then the stiffness eased. Week 3. I walked without the cane inside my apartment. Week 5. I navigated a grocery store without pausing. Week 8. I stood through a full client consultation without sitting once. Healing, I learned, is rarely dramatic. It is incremental, so is independence. My business recovered faster than I expected. Word travels in professional circles about reliability, not family drama. Clients cared that I showed up prepared, that timelines were met, that details were precise. The anniversary dinner was not mentioned again publicly. Not by me, not by them, but something subtle changed in extended family gatherings. Conversations felt more balanced. My mother's narratives were met with polite distance instead of automatic agreement. My father's voice, when we did speak briefly about practical matters, carried less authority and more awareness. The repayment continued, $300, on time, no commentary. It would take years. That was fine. For the first time, the transaction had direction. One Sunday afternoon, my aunt hosted a small barbecue in her backyard. Paper plates, folding chairs, string lights woven through 2 old oak trees. Nothing extravagant. When I arrived, she tapped the center chair at the table. "Save this for you," she said. I sat. No negotiation, no shifting, no implication that I should stand so someone else could feel taller. It was a simple gesture, but it felt revolutionary. Later that evening, as I drove home, I thought about that first moment in the ballroom. It's just a chair. He had been wrong. It was never just a chair. It was a boundary. A test repeated over a decade. Each time I moved, I confirmed the hierarchy. The night I didn't, the system recalibrated. I don't carry anger about it now. I carry information. I know exactly what I am willing to contribute and exactly what I will no longer subsidize. My knee is at 80% strength today, strong enough to stand, strong enough to walk away, and strong enough to sit when I choose to, without asking permission. If we step back from the emotion of this story for a moment, what happened that night was not really about money, and it was not really about a chair. From a psychological perspective, what we witnessed was the collapse of a long-standing family contract, one that had never been spoken aloud, but had been operating for years. In many families, especially in close-knit systems, roles become fixed. There is often a responsible one, the stabilizer, the fixer, the quiet provider. That role can feel noble at first, necessary, even loving. But over time, if boundaries are never clarified, responsibility turns into expectation. Expectation turns into entitlement, and entitlement eventually turns into exploitation. What made this moment powerful was not the public confrontation. It was the decision to stop participating in an unhealthy pattern. Setting a boundary does not destroy a family. It reveals the structure that was already there. Notice something important. There was no screaming, no cruelty, no threats, only documentation, facts, and a calm refusal to continue absorbing the cost of other people's choices. That is what emotional maturity looks like. Many people over the age of 50 understand this deeply. They have lived long enough to know that peace is not maintained by constant sacrifice. It is maintained by clarity. Generosity without limits is not love. It is depletion. And when health, finances, and dignity are repeatedly compromised, the most compassionate action sometimes is distance. If you found yourself in this story, even in small ways, I encourage you to reflect gently. Where in your life are you standing when you deserve to be seated? Where are you funding something that quietly drains you? And if this message resonates, take a moment to like the video, not for the algorithm alone, but as a small acknowledgement that conversations about boundaries matter. And if you want more stories that explore family dynamics, responsibility, and the quiet strength it takes to reset them, consider subscribing. Sometimes we need reminders that choosing self-respect is not selfish. It is corrective. The chair was never just a chair. It was a turning point. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is sit down at our own table and decide what we will no longer pay for.